Welcome to Some Joyful Noises, a music podcast with no rhyme, rhythm, or reason. This show is a proud member of the Anazal Podcast Network. The reason we do this show is for community, not because any of us are music experts, but rather because we believe that music helps shape community, and that's something that's really important to all of us at the Anazal Podcast Network. I'm Joshua Knoll. I am the producer of this show. I say producer and not host because this show has no host. It has no schedule. It has no format. You are just as much the host as I am. If you would like to find out how you could lead your own episode of Some Joyful Noises, then listen to the end of the show for an invitation to lead your own conversation on this podcast. We hope you enjoy this show with no rhyme, no rhythm, and no reason.
Okay, coming at you, we're recording. Ray Dan?
Ready to go.
All right, whether it's Christian worship, Taylor Swift, 21 Pilots, or Farside, Beck, or Remy Wolf, we're here to discuss the music we love and enjoy. Welcome to another episode of Some Joyful Noises, a member of the Anazal Network. And I'm here with Joshua Noel, the founder and brainchild of Some Joyful Noises. I'm Will Rose, one of the hosts of Systematic Ecology, occasionally on Some Joyful Noises and some other podcasts in the Anazal Network. And we're here with a special guest, someone that I've put a lot of hours in my earbuds and glad that we've gotten to know through Trip and through Theology Beer Camp, because we're coming to you live from Theology Beer Camp. Dan Koch, Dan, how are you doing? Man, how you feeling today on day 2 of Theology Beer Camp?
Live and direct.
Yes.
I'm feeling good. The first night I got awful sleep, but I sort of powered through the first, half a day and night. Second half of the day, whatever, of what we got going. And today, last night I got really good sleep. So today I'm like cooking with gas.
Nice.
Had a really fun session that'll be on to your permission feed at some point.
Nice.
And I'm just hanging. I'm hanging for the rest of the night, ready to talk tunes.
We're talking tunes. And Dan is the host of We're Talking Tunes, which is another good name for a podcast, but we can integrate it. That one works. But Dan, Good Vibrations, very good. I'm feeling some good vibrations.
A music podcast called Pretty Good Vibrations. That's probably a bit more relevant here.
And that's and it's part of why Dan is here. I'll share that. Like I have a lot of hours listening. You Have Permission, and I have a story. His intro to You Have Permission that you don't do much anymore. You do different, right? Like the original intro.
Yeah, the long one. Yeah,
the long one. I would occasionally play for my confirmation class just to kind of share the kind of posture we have to faith, which is you have permission to take the modern world and Christian faith seriously. You can ask good questions. We hope not to give terrible answers. And on a youth retreat, we usually show like, a movie of some sort. Maybe there's some religious themes in it. And we have them tease it out and talk about it. And
Braveheart,
Braveheart.
Oh, that was my
Star Wars.
in the 90s in American youth groups with the boys, it was Braveheart season, my dudes.
Remember the Titans? No.
No, we would that.
Okay.
Somehow William Wallace got us to the gospel. I don't know how we got there.
Yeah, but sacrifice, freedom, the screaming of freedom.
This was Wild at Heart era, Sacred Romance era. What Erwin McManus's early career, Barbarian Way. Gosh.
Man, well, I
try not to throw up in my mouth.
I played the intro to your podcast way at the beginning of the retreat. We went all day.
By the way, that's very sweet. I appreciate it.
Yeah. And we went all day, and then the next day we showed the movie. And then in the movie, there was a particular religious leader pastor who was being a dick and who was not doing good things and at the end of the movie, I was like, what was going on here? And Cannon screamed out, he gave bad answers to good questions. And I went, yes, Cannon, you're paying attention. I'm so proud of you. It's training material. So it's curriculum. But we are,
find shared language. We go, oh yeah, that's what I'm talking about. That's one thing that I love attempting to do, to provide for people.
Yeah. And you do a good job. And I look up to that a lot.
So you said earlier that I was the brainchild. That's only like partially true for this one.
Okay.
I, as you know, because it's also sort of what happened with SG.
What is SG?
Like,
some people may not know what
Systematic
SG.
Ecology.
Okay,
It's
there you
another
go.
show on the Onozala Podcast Network. But I get this thing where like I really want something to exist, and sometimes I just get aggravated enough that I make it exist.
That's right. You manifest it.
What happened was like Brandon Knight, also been a part of like some Joyful Noses occasionally, has some really great ideas for like music podcasts he wants to do. And I'm like, okay, yeah, you're on the network. Just create the show. He's like, I might one day. And he's said that for like about a year. I love you, Brandon. And I understand your life is busy and I'm not trying to peer pressure you. But then Matthew Winter had some ideas and I'm like, okay, cool. So let's make it. Like, why don't we have a music podcast already? And then eventually I was just like, you know what? We're just going to create a show with like no format schedule or anything. And whenever you guys want to like do those shows you're doing, just like make an episode and we'll just throw it on this. So
it's a show that has no rhyme, reason. What is it? No
rhyme, no rhythm, no reason. A music podcast with no rhyme, no rhythm, and no reason.
That's it. That's the tagline. Anybody can, no host, no schedule, just hop on. And so we're at Theology Boot Camp, where there's the intersection of theology, philosophy, the things we geek out on, music a part of it, community, a lot of the deconstructing community, people who don't feel welcomed in a church or part of a church, but still resonate with the big questions around faith, around science, around the modern world. Trip has created community where they can gather, not just in the earbuds and listen to people talk deep stuff and big questions, but also come together and share time with each other. So that's what we're here doing. And part of this podcast, some Joyful Noises, is acknowledging that music creates community. It shapes community. It shapes identity. And so that's why we have Dan here, who is getting, you're close to become a psychologist.
About a year from now, I should be a licensed psychologist.
Yeah, licensed psychologist.
Final year of internship and then study and take a test.
And was a professional musician. Still part of your vocation is creating music, content for others and those kind of things. So
I had a tiny bit of that still, but mostly that's over. But yeah, I was toured in a band called Sherwood for 8 years, put out records from 2004 till when we broke up in 2010. We did a 2016 record as well. I've had a couple other bands over the years. I did a project called Pacific Gold, originally called Wayfarer. And that was like rewritten hymns. Oh. And if you think that you'd really like that, then you might really like it. From my perspective, it was like a half successful experiment and a half failed experiment. Some things about it bug me. But I do know a lot of people who really like those records, so I won't shit on my own stuff.
Right.
And the last thing I did was a sampling-based instrumental kind of like chill dance record under the moniker Havana Swim Club.
I did like that. That was good. You shared that with folks, your followers on your Patrons. And
that fits for me in like studying music. Like I have a playlist of like instrumental, but has some
I just had an idea.
Nice vibes and stuff, you know? So
maybe there's something on that record that I could use as the intro music to my podcast. I'm going to do.
You're really welcome to.
Okay.
I would love that.
All right. I'm going to listen to so my idea is I'm going to have a podcast called We're Going to Laugh About This Later, about sharing stories that work for any of the time, but later on we look back and laugh on it. And we all have them.
That's very
like my bear encounter this summer. It was terrifying, but now I look back and laugh at it.
It's not become, we're going to laugh about this later episode.
Man,
I want to start a podcast called Yes Regrets.
Okay.
What? And you just, everybody come tell their worst regret. And maybe people will like laugh, some Schadenfreude, and then also learn a little bit and maybe not make the
That's the idea of we're going to laugh about this.
There's a functional problem with mine, which is people generally don't want to talk about that.
Yeah, I want it to be
trying to figure out what mine is now.
It's a good question.
Well, we're going to laugh about this later. I think I'm gonna probably have church members listen to it. So it'll be PG-13. So I don't want to like them to air their dirty laundry, but we all have those stories. Like, at the time, not funny, but we're loud. So anyway, we're going to have some theme song. Cool. And so part of this also is to talk about music, community, and your experience with that.
I forgot to say that I was a commercial composer. That's what you were talking
about. Composer.
For about 10 years, 12 years.
Which is cool.
Writing music that was primarily used in advertisements, couple documentaries, like, indie films and stuff, but mostly for ads. And then I worked my way through grad school now to become a psychologist doing that.
So talking about music now, is there something that you're geeking out on with music or in your earbuds or something right now, something you're like, I'm really hyped about this particular band?
Here's
that
the
I
problem.
Yeah.
It's not a good fit maybe for your listening audience. I don't know. I would be curious to hear.
Okay.
But if you think I'm right, we don't have to linger here.
Okay. Yeah.
But the band that I am just having a little mania over is the Misfits.
Ah, sweet.
I
yeah.
missed them.
I grew up skating and surfing. Yes. I know the Misfits well.
But so I didn't absorb that band when I was getting into old punk. So when I was in high school, I got into punk after I was into ska. And in that era, that's like Green Day, Rancid, NoFX, like MXPX and the Christian Scene, Slick Shoes. But a lot of those bands were really good at pointing back to the earlier bands. And punk rock is not that big of a genre, so it's not that hard to go back and do a little bit of work and like roughly understand how it got from 1976 to 1996. It's not like, it's not insurmountable for a teenager. So I did that and I fell in love with The Clash and I fell in love with the Ramones.
Yep.
And I had a band I had two bands in college that were Ramones themed. We had a silly band, like a humor, like joke songs called the Renomes. We had a song called Lord of the Gnome.
Weird Al would be great.
Fellowship of the Gnome. And then we had a cover band that we did only one practice, but an actual Ramones cover band, which led to Sherwood. Anyway, so
that's a good story.
But I missed the Misfits because I didn't grow up watching John Carpenter films, like horror, like B movies. We weren't like a big Halloween house. You know, you were a little bit afraid of that stuff as an evangelical. Mm-hmm. And so probably at that age, I thought that stuff was like quite real and probably quite literal. And so something like Danzig singing about killing babies, I was not capable at that time of recognizing something that's campy, that is winking, that is like doing a bit on old American culture and 1940s movies. And I just didn't have that. So I just thought it was serious. And I was like, well, this is probably evil. And then I just kind of missed it for a while. And the recording quality on Misfits records I actually kind of love it, but it's not like it's raw, big and clear and pleasing when you first hear it. And so
even this recording is punk, even how they recorded it.
And honestly, it's a lot like Velvet Underground recording techniques, and Danzig was into Velvet Underground. And so it's actually really it's so fascinating. I could geek out on it a lot, but
it was fun.
So I'm just like neck deep in Misfits mania right now. And
that's cool.
Having so much fun and like starting to worry a little bit about how long it's going on.
It's funny because there are some you catch ear or you're turned on to a band you knew about or adjacent to, and then you really start listening to it a lot, and you get it, and then you're like, okay, I'm burnt out, but then you come back to it or whatever. Like music has that way of either sticking with you for long term or you just have those phases and things. For me, I like it that Instagram now you can put music to posts and those kind of things. And so I follow a lot of surfers, surfing, that kind of stuff. And so when the surfers self-promote and put their clips on Instagram of whatever session they had, they'll put a song to it. And
just like a rad old surf video.
Like a rad old surf video. Like I used to love those surf videos or surf movies that come out with a soundtrack.
Yeah. Totally.
But now they like curate their own content through Instagram. There's different videos and stuff like that. But I overheard somebody posted and they used Far Side, the 90s rap band, as one of theirs, and I've been going a deep dive into Far Side. And I even went to Josh, like, Josh, I want this as my intro music. He's like, you probably can't get versions. You probably have to pay a lot for that. I'm like, okay. Or just do it and see if they catch me. But that's where I'm too. Joshua, what about you? What's like something that is in your buzz right now?
Oh, it's a little strange. I talked about this on another episode of the show, actually, but there's a band I really like, the Velveteers, that I met them I was introduced to them when I went to a Greta Van Fleet concert. They were the opener. I was kind of drug out for my wife. I don't care about Greta Van Fleet. There's like 2 or 3 songs.
I'm like,
these
are them a trip. A
lot of the stuff I'm like, I don't get the hype. But like there's a few like Broken Bells I listen to at least once a week. I think that's a fantastic song.
Okay.
But the thing with the Velveteers, I loved them. I was obsessed, but they have like 12 songs, like I'm exaggerating, but they have like very few songs so far. They're like, because they're a newer band. So I was like, so I really burned myself on out quick. But a couple weeks ago, they released a new song and I've been kind of listening to that on repeat, and I'm going to burn myself out again. But I'm digging it.
Cool.
Yeah. Cool. Because they're like an indie rock band, but the new song, they kind of like decided that they were just going to fuse some funk in there. And I'm like, this is great.
Sweet.
Dan, you share a little bit of kind of like as a kid and your upbringing in kind of the evangelical conservative. Then,
Yeah.
But in terms of what led you, was there a particular band when you were younger that you connected to that turned you on to becoming a musician, or to a band that led you to share what? Like, was there something that you remember as a kid that you're like, oh, I like this music. I want to do this. I want music to be part of my life and vocation.
Yeah, I mean, it would be punk, and I'm not the first person to say this. Like in any number of like the myriad documentaries you can watch about, you know, Britain or California or whatever in those early years, but punk was the clearest. It was the most accessible form of music for the least amount of musical talent.
Yeah.
You had to have a guy who could play the drums pretty fast, and then you could turn the distortion up and basically fake it till you make it.
Yeah.
Everywhere else, you know, and that if you get too good, like you actually do lose something with genres like that. And so I was 14 when I joined my first punk band, and
What was the name of that band?
it was called Permanent Holiday.
Nice.
Yeah. And so I had been playing drums for maybe 2 years or something, maybe 3 years. And I was good enough to be in a local band and be a drummer. And then I got kicked out of that band because I didn't load the gear often enough. It's so funny.
That's good teenager.
And then, it's a real character flaw. But
Yeah.
and then I was in a band with my friends that they started, and I joined pretty early and sort of became the singer-songwriter and, you know, kind of colonized the thing that they had started, but we were called Ignorant Youth. And
That's punk. That's so punk.
I do think it's, you know, so it wouldn't have been any one band in particular, I don't think. I think it was a number of those bands. And like, I think what happened is it's a developmental timing. So I understand music pretty mathematically, and I write music pretty mathematically. And I think that there was a sort of level of math that I developmentally got to, and then I was able to write songs. So I was able to apply the math my own. And it was super derivative. And of course, like, I'm actually just imbibing these chord progressions and these melodies, and I'm just very slightly changing them and whatever at the beginning. You're doing a lot of mimicking, but punk was a very smooth ramp because it was like, well, I mean, you just turn the distortion up. It's like power chords. You could literally learn how to do it in a couple days.
And most people come to those shows are just kind of like, cool, go loud, go punk. They're not listening to the nuance in the music. And
especially at a local show. It's really about like, hey, can we like jump around and like, you know, can we get some of this energy out?
Where's the mosh pit? Yeah.
Yeah, in like a positive way. And yeah. And so, I love that about punk. And I think that's why that was first.
Nice.
Yeah, it's kind of as designed.
And I guess the progression of like bands, like you start a band because you like a particular genre or band, and you kind of mimic that. And there comes a point when you become your own, but then when did the songwriting creativity, did that process of your creative process of writing music, when did you know this is something like I'm good at and I can make a living of this, I'm going to do this, I'm going to tour, we're going to write songs, create songs. It's one thing that I can listen to a good song and say, I like this, but then, or I can learn how to play this particular song I like, is another to like, I'm going to write my own. What?
Yeah. So just for context, because most people probably don't know who Sherwood was who are listening, but we got to like a medium level of emo success in the 2000s. Like we sold about 75,000 records over 3 albums, and we played about 800 shows. And we played Japan. We went to Europe 3 times. Like,
and when you came to Chapel Hill, you're like, I think I've been here. Did I play? And I was like, did you play Cat's Cradle in Carver? You're like, yeah, I played Cat's Cradle. Like, very famous place in North Carolina. We small check Cat's Cradle.
Yeah. And it was, we did like the best way to say it. It was our full-time job, but we didn't save any money.
Yeah.
Didn't have to have other jobs, but we literally left the band with no savings. And so that's kind of what I'm referring to. And I had no notion that I could be good enough to do that. But our singer, Nate, he basically convinced me. He was like, we can do this. You are a good enough songwriter and I'm a good enough singer.
And you were drums out there?
And at that point I was playing drums at the beginning. And I was like, okay. And he was not a good enough singer yet. I was not a good enough songwriter yet. So he's wrong about that.
Yeah.
But I don't even think he saw potential in me. I think he just wanted to be in a band and I was his friend and I was willing to try with him. And I think that's perfectly fine.
Yeah.
I think that's the real reason. So I didn't know. And so I didn't really find out until and we had a very slow, gradual rise to that mid-level point. So we never had anything sort of overnight. It was like, we printed our own EP and sold about 7,000 of them. And then we got a 1-album deal. They sold about 15,000.
Age of the CD?
12.
Kind of that stuff.
Yeah, CDs. Yeah,
Yep.
Almost all CDs. And then at that point, it was only CDs. And then we put another one out and that sold like 40. And, so it was like, there wasn't like a big change.
Right.
So I guess I figured I was pretty good. I actually, the truth is I probably thought I was better than I was for a while.
For young adults sounds, it's in a band.
Yeah. But, people, you get those first local like friends who actually seem to really like the songs and are not just doing it because you're their friend. And that's like the first inkling of, maybe we got something here. And then I think there was like a kid I'd gone to high school with who's a couple years younger who was like, hey, I got a copy of that EP you guys did and I really like this song. And, it was only that song that was any good. But that's enough if you get to one. And there was something good in there. And I think we refined it later. But like, you get those little bits. And I think I'm egotistical enough and narcissistic enough that I didn't need a lot of that.
Right.
So I latched onto it probably. And then it turned out that I was good enough to do it at a pretty decent level, but not good enough to do it at like a true success level. And I genuinely think that. I think I'm not that good of a songwriter. I think I'm a pretty good songwriter.
Being a songwriter, playing in a band, does that shift how you listen to music? Like you listen, because like as a preacher, I feel like I'm a decent preacher, but when I go and hear somebody preach, I'm listening a different way than like other. I'm like, why do they make this way? Why do I do this? I try to take.
Absolutely does.
Now, when you listen to music, and you listen to Misfits, when you're a huge Beach Boys fan, but like you listen to other music, you're like, yeah, I don't know what they did there. What that was a choice, or that was not a choice. Or,
it's exactly the same. But I think music is it's more of an aesthetic experience than listening to a sermon, right?
Right.
So I would imagine that the sermon thing is analogous to like an author when they're reading other people's books and they know how a book is put together.
Structured.
Structured.
The point they're trying to make.
So they see a lot more in it than I see because I've never written a book. So there's definitely that. Mostly I think that just heightens appreciation. I think there are, with a few exceptions, there are some mixes where I'm like, I know how easy it would have been to fix this problem. Why is there
as a podcast editor, you do
why is there so much high end on the hi-hat? Like it's distorting,
Yeah.
And like,
interesting.
Things like that. So occasionally there are things that it's like really hard to listen to because it seems so avoidable. But mostly I would say it's like, oh, I love how they did that, or something like that.
That's cool. We follow up there. I know where I want to go next, but anything there that sparked something for you, Joshua?
I don't think you want to know what my brain went through.
Okay, there you go. No,
Sure. Anyway.
Okay.
He mentioned that there was he said there was one song that was any good, and my brain just goes, well, yeah, that one episode of Phineas and Ferb. And then my brain for a little bit just was like, get you goo. He's like, I love you.
Yeah.
That is not the vibe right now. I should stop.
Well, where there's album, there's TV, there's like just shows you watch, and there's like your favorite episode of the season, but you still like the whole show. And there's definitely artists that you get their album and you're like, man, I'm disappointed because there's only really 2 songs I vibe with.
Yeah.
But like, I'm a big fan of Elbow. Like they put their music together and I love what they do. But then the last couple albums, there's 2 songs I really love. The rest I'm like, it kind of all sounds the same. I'm like, what's going on?
I love Smash Mouth. And by that, I mean, those 3 songs are great.
One of my
I have whole bands like that. I think it's fine.
Yeah.
Breakfast at Tiffany's by Deep Blue Something. I don't know any other Deep Blue Something. That's fine.
My idea is I think there should be a one-hit wonder tour where you have 20 bands and they all come out and play their one-hit wonder.
Sounds like great economically.
And then they just show.
No problem.
Yeah, I think we can pull it off. Let's try it. So moving to like your new vocation of like psychology and thinking about music, and we talked about this podcast is in worship. There's a reason that hymns are spiritual technologies that we gather around and communicate that we articulate our faith through it.
Yeah.
How do you see like the concert experience, the music experience, the gathering experience? Music, that's a broad question. We could talk all night about this, but in terms of how do you see music shaping community? And then as a psychologist, how do you see music helping people shape identity, identity politics, who they connect with, all those things? I think that's big. What music? Someone was like, "Oh, I like that band. I like music. I like to jam out. I like to get, like to dance." But then it creates culture. It creates community.
Most music is also connected to a style, like a fashion style and an aesthetic, and depending on the genre, there's sort of more or less extreme of that. Like I would guess like a lot of real metal fans, they wear black and they have I don't mean they're like goth walking through the mall.
Their hair,
but I can tell when I meet dudes, I'm like, it's a metal dude.
A metalhead
that long.
Like
yeah. That. And and then you can obviously imagine like gutter punks and like, there's like the sort of almost the clown version of it.
Right.
Or like ICP fans or whatever, juggalos. But there is something associated, you associate top 40 with like kind of high fashion and kind of what's the prevailing looks of the day. Country music, you've got your cowboy boots and hats. You have different, So that is actually, I think as a training psychologist, I think that that's actually a big part of what is so powerful about music in those particular developmental years when we are defining our own identity among options. And that's generally thought of as adolescence.
Yeah.
And so there's something going on there because I think that what drew me to punk was not only musical. It was aesthetic too. I think I liked it. You mentioned surf videos. I think a lot about surf and skate videos from the 90s.
Yeah.
And like you pop in that VHS or later a DVD and it's, it's a Good Riddance track and a No Effects track. And then, whoa, who is that? Oh, that's the Clamps? Like, who are they? And like you discover, like, think about that. The act of sitting around with my buddies watching a skate video, that's not a identity neutral activity. It's all the music is coming in and confirming. It's like a brace, it's like coming around and supporting the other identity formation that's already happening around visuals, around maybe my buddy skateboards and I BMX bike. We like that activity. So we're sharing activities. We use the lingo of this subculture. Now we have shared language.
Yeah.
So I'm figuring out who I am or whatever. And then the music is like baptizing me into those broader sets of cultural things. And I think that's why music, I'm riffing, but I think that's maybe why music is so powerful is that it actually just goes so deep for people. There are maybe some people that it is mostly window dressing, but a lot of people go a lot deeper with music than that. And, I don't know what the numbers are, but I would believe it's more people than like, for instance, really like to read novels or even really love movies. I bet you there's more people who really love a particular kind of music.
I at risk of having myself psychoanalyze.
I won't really.
What's really interesting, Joe, like you're bringing that up, and I'm like flipping through my own experiences, and so I was growing in a household where, like, until I was 18, the limits of my music was Christian and Disney, and I am not a rebellious person by nature. So like the one outlet, like I had my aunt would play the Shrek soundtrack for me. So I heard
that's why Smash Mouth. Yeah.
But I think that's so interesting, like, because now I'm like analyzing myself, like, is that why I love Disney so much? Is it like, that's the only music? Because I didn't like Christian music. It was just the only thing I was allowed to listen to. So I'm like,
you are
Disney. I know every word of like every Disney song from like the 1940s all the way to today.
You listen to the Hercules soundtrack still.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Well, one other thing about that is the quality differential. Because, and Disney, actually, I mean, my first thought is, a Disney song is like a thing. But when I think about it, I was like, well, actually, there's a lot of Disney films like set in different times and places with sort of different scores and soundtracks. So yeah, maybe the Aladdin and Lion King songs by the mid 90s are okay. There's like a famous duet, then they go for the Grammys, and they had come to that. They had come to that format by then. Well, you got the Robin Hood soundtrack, which is gold to me.
I definitely do whistle stop around my house at least once.
I used to sing it. I used to whistle it to our firstborn all the time and play the ukulele.
I love that.
Like, so I wonder if it's like the old, most of Christian stuff is worse. And so Disney, depending on it, whatever genre Disney's doing, they're going to do their version of it, but it's going to be done at an extremely high level. They're going to hire Gershwin because they fucking can. They're gonna get Hammers, Bernstein and whatever. I don't know. I'm not a big musicals guy. Yeah. So like the best in the biz.
Yeah. I didn't. The other side. I'm sorry.
No. This is why we're doing it. This is interesting.
It's so interesting because like I was thinking about that, and then the other part was
Rogers and Hammerstein. Okay, sorry.
Got it. There you go. He did not look that up. It came to his head. He did not look on his phone. I watched it happen in his head.
Live action. No, but like, so when I'm still like learning songs I should know and like regular references.
You're filling in gaps.
Yeah, like regular references people are making, and I just like shake my head, and they're like referencing like U2, and I'm like, that is a letter and a number.
Yeah.
Even I grew up with U2.
I love.
Like, now I'm psychoanalyzing you. Going, that's why that explains a lot, Josh.
But at the same time, like the stuff that I did gravitate to, I guess, like with the clothing and stuff must match, because like I'm recalling a time like early when I met my wife, like the first drive we did, she just straight up goes, you look like someone who listens to Passenger, and like I've wondered a long time what that meant.
Without like anyone telling you. Now that could have just been chance, or you could have tacitly picked it up and sort of recognized a trend of other people who are affiliated with this thing, and then go, I like that. That sounds like that'd look good.
Yeah. I think it could be, and I've been doing a lot of thinking through what makes Passenger different from other folk music. His stuff is a lot more philosophical. Like a lot of folk music is like you're angsty. Oh, I'm sad about by whoever you lost, and like real life stuff. And I love that stuff too. But like his stuff is usually, you get stuff like, you never know you love her till you let her go. You get life for the living, so you might as well live it, or you're better off dead. Like you get these like really philosophical ideas. He's very much an existentialist. And I think what it was is like when I'm 18 was also the first time I've ever introduced to other religions. I started taking philosophy classes, and then here's someone who's speaking philosophy.
He's given language, and
I'm
music.
like, this is good.
Yeah,
absolutely.
And I like, because my kids are in college, and so my oldest 22, Hannah is huge music buff, loves music, and she's at age now where I'm super proud because she's like, Dad, I think you like this. Oh, I'm listening to this. Have you heard this? I think you would like it. So she knows my style, and I'm like, I'm so proud of you. You know me, but also you have good taste in music. I feel like I was a good parent. Like there's things, but she also has this ownership thing that if other people start liking something that she liked first, like she gets like, no, that's my band. That can't be your band. Wait, she loves Greta Van Fleet now. And I was like, oh, I saw that with Trip. And she was like, you saw them in concert? What do you mean? And you didn't tell me? Like, no, I thought this is my band. Like, wait a minute. Why is this? So there's also this kind of psychological of ownership. This is me. This is my identity. This is what is happening. And, do I want to invite you to be a part of that, part of me or not? And so her inviting me, like Remy Wolf, she's like, Dad, this is my new favorite artist. I really think you like her. And so some of those songs I've been jamming out really hard. And I'm like, you're right. This is really good music.
Yeah,
and she's got, I don't know if do you know Remy Wolf?
I do. I was telling you last night, I love the song Hello, and the song Liz. And I did her. I think I liked the earlier singles more than I liked the record when I heard the first full length. But she's incredibly talented.
Yeah. And, I'm a Beck fan too. So if you can get your kind of funk on and bass on, but then do like switch up and do like a string. His dad was a string composer. So it's like bust out really methodic strings and cello. You got me. Yeah. And I think that's important as we share joyful noises and to talk about music, go a little deeper. It is important to understand how it can hit our identity, but also the communities we are a part of and those kind of things too. So it has been interesting to see, here at Theology Beer Camp, Trip, he's a theater kid, preacher's kid, but also loves karaoke, loves getting up there, youth pastor at heart. But that music, like you're inviting people to sing karaoke with you, but then you also have a music artist sing for you. And they're having these music breaks, the band between these, they're trying to mix up all the senses with that kind of stuff. It's just a part of who we are and what we're doing. So
even people who are playing, like, I think he was really intentional with like the identity process, because you have like Kevin Max, who's gone through like the deconstruction, so all the deconstructionists are out.
Right.
And then today we have Ivy King and Flamey Grant. So you have that like the queer community and that like identity point there too. So I think that intentionality was really,
that's what it's about.
Trip is so smart.
It is. Cool. Well, thanks, Dan. I think there's one question here.
Quick question.
Go for it.
Since, around the identity stuff. Because we're talking about how like a lot of times we find the songs that we're already kind of identifying with those groups, but I think sometimes you see those songs that break through. So specifically, I'm thinking of like Better Love, and then the song that's literally just it's the numbers for the suicide hotline. And both of those got really popular. And I watched people who were like evangelical adjacent squirm because you have these songs that are like really clearly making some strong cases for not being dicks to the queer community. And it's like this song, but so they're still playing it, but I feel like it kind of broke some barriers there. Like,
yeah, I think media plays a part. I mean, there is like a theory in sociology that like will and grace is like a big reason that, more gay marriage reform and stuff was able to get like more popular support. People talk about, portrayals of certain characters, like the movie Philadelphia, also like possibly playing a pretty big role in like acceptance around HIV and homosexuality and all that stuff, where Denzel Washington like plays the character who has some stuff to learn about that. And we identify with Denzel Washington. We like him a lot, and so like having movie stars kind of do that. I think all that stuff really does have an effect. I think the strongest effect though, when people change their mind about things like queer affirmation or whatever, is friendships. And ultimately, like the thing I hear more than anything else was, I have these queer friends. You cannot tell me that they are any less loving, or, that I just cannot see for the life of me how they're any way less than in like God's eyes, because I know them. They are my close friends. And I think that
I trust them more. I trust them.
I trust them more than you, person that I'm having this conversation with. I think that's implied. And it's like, so, but I do think media, including music, plays a role.
And there's an edge, you go swinging it back around to punk. Like there's a way of like push the edge, pushing the envelope. You're going to break boundaries. Like there's a reason that we're going to be edgy. So there's that the lingo around like, oh, they sold out because they went mainstream. Or what about like the deep cuts and pushing the edges? So how do you make change? How do you shape community? Do you want to make money and a living? Do you want to sell out because you want to be, sell out arenas, or are you going to still do
some of that punk stuff like is really childish and immature, and I don't vibe with it anymore at all. I probably vibed with all of it when I was 15. Didn't discriminate, but now some of it is like, the more like boots on the ground sociopolitics of like advocating for the poor and stuff like that. I think that stuff always really resonated and still does in a way that some of the, anti-system stuff now to me just sounds like teenagers.
Yeah.
I don't find much meaning in it anymore, but yeah.
And for me, it was like 90s rap, like whether it's, Public Enemy or whatever. Like I, as a, upper class white surfer kid, like listen to 90s rap, they were pushing me to think through kind of like systemic racism, but not understanding it and trying to figure out what they're saying. This kind of hip hop spoken word poetry about, what's going on in their communities. And I just thought it was cool because it had a good beat. And, I wish that song could play in my clip, in my surf video. I want them to play that song. When I did it, like, what would be my song in my video, and something about, but behind all that, they have a message of trying to express what's going on in their communities and lives.
Opening a whole new culture to you that you would have had no access to. Yep. I think, it's funny. We used to like kind of make fun of the white kids who were really into rap.
Yeah.
It was like you guys must be pretending, or I think it was probably what we thought. Like something about it seemed fake, seemed like a show. Not us punks with our mohawks. We're not putting on a show. But it makes a lot more sense to me. I'm just like, oh, like it brought like a life to the suburbs. Like it's like this whole other exciting world.
Yep.
Whether or not it's, real or being exaggerated or whatever, like it's not what this life looks like. And it's like a, not just escapism, it's a genuine incursion of another culture into this kind of sealed suburban culture.
Breaking down walls like Walk This Way with Aerosmith and Run DMC.
Exactly.
Literally breaking down the wall. I'm coming to get
That's good. That's a good wrap up there.
Yeah.
I got a weird connection point with that of like,
nervous.
Kind of makes me think of like
nervous.
Oh, okay. No, it makes me like,
how weird.
Yeah. How weird.
Rick went to Doctor Who. Like naturally.
Yeah. Okay. That tracks.
Because a lot of what the Doctor does is he's just like traveling places, not because he's like trying to save the day or do some like heroic mission. He's just like, whoa, look at what people were like in Shakespearean England. This is freaking cool. He's just like, let's just hang out here and see what people are like.
I'm intrigued. Yeah.
He's like doing this kind of stuff.
It's armchair anthropology, armchair travel kind of a thing. Yeah.
And it's great. Good. And I feel like since my theology has kind of like been developing the last few years, and I've got to this point of like, I don't feel like I need to like win souls to Christ. And instead I'm like, wow, God is in everyone. I've just like have this like really passionate drive to like
curiosity.
What's I say with other people?
Yeah.
It's like, at the airport, I'm just like in this random local bookstore in the airport. And I'm like, hey, this person is willing to talk to me. What is the one book here that most resonates with you? And I want to just experience it because that meant something to you. And like, you're someone made in the image of God, and that's so cool. And like, I feel like I did the same thing with music. Like even like, even though Greta Van Fleet might not be my favorite, like my wife loves them. So like every now and then I'm like, I'm going to listen to this and like try to hear it like through her ears because like that resonates with another person made in the image of God, like who is also my wife, which makes it even cooler. But
yeah, I want to understand you through your music because if this is a part of you and it's important to you, then I want to understand why it's important to you, but also like maybe I'll vibe with it, maybe I won't, but yeah, that's good. Well, let's wrap this up. Dan, all right, on this, you put on this line, recommend one Christian artist, artist outside of normal Christian or pop culture. So at the end of our episodes, we do recommendations, whether it's like Ecology or others. Is there a
Christian one not Christian? Is that
what for someone who's in the music game and admires? I admire that how much you love music and know music. Is there a recommendation? It could be Christian, non-Christian, but is there something that you would recommend for folks that are listening to this or like, oh, go check out this band? And it could be Christian, could not. But if there is, we're at Theology Beer Camp. If there's a connection to like deeper theological, philosophical questions, then why not?
I got one.
Okay.
There's a indie power pop band called Nada Surf. And
as in like SE
NADA space SURF. They had they were kind of a one-hit wonder initially with a song called Popular in the 90s that had this like spoken word verse.
Okay.
Very weird. But then they basically had this kind of power pop career, which is like, comes out of the Byrds and Big Star, and like it's taking some of kind of Beatles and 60s British Invasion like pop songwriting, and then but like updating it with distorted guitars. Matthew, the singer and songwriter of Nada Surf, he has like a philosopher's mind, and like seems to be like engaging in some kind of spirituality, certainly engaging with like deep meaning questions, and is a really great poet. And
cool.
I think there's some kind of Eastern, I get a kind of an Eastern vibe sometimes, but he has so many songs that touch on really deep, deeply resonating themes for me as a person, as a liberal Christian. But like this song, one of their big songs is Always Love, Hate Will Get You Every Time. And there's other stuff about, like there's a song that I feel like started as a compassion journal project where he was supposed to take the perspective of like an animal, song called Fruit Fly.
Okay.
Where it's like, he like takes on the perspective of a fruit fly who no longer has any like fruit and is running out of gas. And like, what can you do but go on? And then but then it's like, well, that's obviously a human thing too. And he's just operating at a very deep level, and he's a great pop songwriter and a great singer. So that's my recommendation.
Nice. It's a great recommendation. And we'll recommend Good Vibrations.
Pretty
good vibrations where you go and walk through some music you like or listen through. There's even tournaments, there's battles.
Tournaments.
Tournaments
Pretty
is
gamified, yeah.
Gamified, but pretty fun. So it's, again, you podcast different areas of your life, but that you're like, one of your ideas, like, I really want to do this music podcast and share with you all, because if I don't tell somebody, it's for fun. If I don't tell somebody, I got to tell somebody because it's inside me. I got to share it with the world. So a lot of that stuff as we go there. So
yeah.
Dan, thanks for being a part of this. Thanks for hanging out with you, and glad that we made some connections through mutual friends, and I'll keep listening to your stuff. I know that's for sure. Joshua, how do you close out this Some Joyful Noises? What's your closing?
I don't think it matters.
Should we make
no rhyme, rhythm, or reason?
There isn't.
There's no format.
But you want to stay noisy though? Is that kind of what you want to do?
We could stay noisy.
I think we could stay noisy.
You want to keep it noisy?
Let's keep it noisy, or stay with it. Let's just stay noisy.
We hope you enjoyed this episode of Some Joyful Noises, a proud member of the Anazal Podcast Network. You can listen to other Anazal podcasts with the link that's down below in this show's description. If you have ideas for this show or would like to lead one of these episodes, then you can email us at anazalministriespodcast@gmail.com and pitch an idea to us, and we'll talk about it and see whether or not we can make it work for you to lead your own episode. We hope to hear from you soon, and that you'll help us keep it noisy.